Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. I'm privileged to be interviewing Lara Foot, who is the CEO and Artistic Director of the Baxter Theatre Centre at the University of Cape Town. She's been bringing work to Edinburgh and to London for, I don't know, at least 15, 16 years, and maybe quite a lot longer. And it's included some unforgettable productions. Yale Farber's Miss Julie is one of late that's been good. And I've never forgotten, apparently 16 years ago, I was at the Traverse watching watermelons being mashed up in something called The Wellbeing, which in Edinburgh, anything that sticks in your mind for 2 days is a miracle. Anything that sticks in your mind for 16 years is something beyond that. Lara, welcome.
Thank you.
Right, first of all, do you want to talk briefly about what you brought to Edinburgh this year and why you see Edinburgh as being part of your remit?
Yes. Well, we brought 6 Baxter shows, including Miss Julie, which was the hit in 2012, and we thought it would be a good idea to bring it back. And we decided to bring, first of all, plays that were running and ready. So, just in terms of financial decisions, we didn't want to go into rehearsal with plays. So I had been recently selected to be the featured artist at the Grahamstown National Arts Festival in 2016. So I had to do 2 of my previous works, which were Tsapang and Kurumus. And then I did a new work, which was The Inconvenience of Wings. So those 3 plays were ready to roll. And they, certainly Tsapang and Kurumus were, have been iconic in a way in South Africa, in that they've run and come back, and the kids study the plays, and they're sort of flagships for the Baxter Theatre. And then Inconvenience of Wings was my new play, and Andrew Buckland, who's in Inconvenience of Wings and was also in The Wellbeing, which you were speaking about now, he did a play called Tobacco, so we thought we'd bring that as well. And then Nedi Shabangu, who's also in The Inconvenience of Wings, did Tsapang some years ago and toured internationally and toured to London. Because we had revived that recently, we thought we'd bring that. And then The Fall was our new baby, which looked at the Roads Must Fall movement, which had happened at the university when in April of 2015 thousands of students protested, and eventually the massive statue of Cecil John Rhodes, which had looked over the university and the valley for all those years, was dismantled and taken down. And it was the beginning of a decolonisation movement, I suppose, of decolonising education and university. And at the time, they were graduating students that were in a play of Black Dog and Jinyama, which was a Barney Simon play that came from the Market Theatre, and we were doing a 20-year tribute to Barney Simon. He'd been dead for 20 years, and we decided to look at some of his plays. And Black Dog was a student production in their final year, and we brought it from the student theatre to the Baxter Theatre, and some of those students were in the Fallist movement. In fact, they were leaders of the movement. And I said to them, wouldn't it be great to take that same style of Barney Simon docudrama of the 70s protest theatre and look at what's happening in the Roads Must Fall, which then became Fees Must Fall movement. And so they workshopped. We commissioned them, and they workshopped this wonderful production, which at the time I thought it would be insular and sort of parochial in that it would affect us at the university and in Cape Town, but it took flight, and it's done very well all over South Africa, and now it's doing incredibly well in Edinburgh. So it obviously has themes which are universal, and Black Lives Matter, and just what is colonialization done and its effect on the world and education. So that's our new baby, the Baxter Theatre's new baby, and young group, sort of 21, 22-year-old actors, and they're fabulous. So those are the 6 plays, and of course the Inconvenience of Wings, which was my latest play, looking at bipolar disorder and codependency and the effect of bipolar and other mental disorders on not only on the patient but on the family in particular. For me, that was an interesting step for me in the sense that it's not looking at a socio-political problem or issue, but rather at a more human, more personal issue, and developing a story out of that.
Also giving a wonderful opportunity for Jennifer Stein to give just an outstanding performance.
No, I mean, she's quite extraordinary. The way that she tackled that part and her investigation of the mania, just from such a clean and respectful space in terms of people with the disorder. And she's riveting. She's unbelievable to work with. And of course the combination with her and Andrew Buckland, they're a wonderful team.
And why Edinburgh? What is the attraction for a South African theatre of bringing 6 productions to Edinburgh?
Well, look, I mean, this is a Baxter Theatre season, so we're not representing South Africa, we're representing the Baxter, and we're from South Africa. And we see ourselves as a company creating new and relevant work which is interesting in content and complex in content and sometimes also cutting edge in style. And we want to, be competitive in the world. We don't want to just be stuck at the end of Africa. We want to be part of a world conversation and to develop and grow ourselves. So we need to see other work. And of course, Edinburgh is a marketplace. So, we want to be here because we want to be picked up and tour internationally. And it seems to be the best place to be, because we know that producers from other festivals and theatres are here. And we have been successful in the past in getting, tours from being in Edinburgh.
Right. What about your career? So I've been watching your plays probably on and off for best part of 20 years by the sound of it. How did you get into theatre to start with? Did you come from a theatrical family?
Not at all, no. I was 17 in the middle of sort of protest theatre years, and I saw my first play at 17, and it was a play called Born in the RSA at the Market Theatre by Barney Simon, who I've just been speaking about. And it was a play about what was happening in the country under apartheid government and censorship, conscription, and I came from a white suburb in Pretoria, conservative town. I had sort of liberal-minded parents, but nevertheless, one was so isolated at that time. I'm talking in sort of 1984. And I saw this play, and I went with the school, and you have one of those life-changing experiences. Some people talk of that when they. So
it was a single visit to the theatre that converted you.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Shook me, and I, for the first time, I understood what was going on in the country that I lived in, because of censorship. One didn't hear about it, and I decided there and then that whatever those guys were doing on the stage, I wanted to do that. So I was going to study law, and then I changed my mind. So I've always had a sense of sort of a social responsibility in connection to theatre, whilst it being entertaining and I'm not saying I just do educational theatre, but I've always had a sense that I need to do theatre that could be life-altering or life-changing, or certainly enlightening.
The impression that we probably have outside South Africa is at that time that was all that was going on there, though you probably couldn't see it. The likes of Athol Fugard, Barney Simon, everything was deeply politicised and necessarily so.
Yes, well, it was like the theatre was a living newspaper, because somehow it got away with telling the truth at times, depending on the space. And the Market Theatre was the space, and in Cape Town, the Baxter Theatre was the space. And then, so I worked for the Market Theatre, and now I run the Baxter Theatre, and it's always had that sort of ideology. It's always been an integrated theatre and, theatre of the people. But South African actors still have that sense of connectivity and complicity and ubuntu with one another. And I think South African actors are pretty awesome in that way. So we still seem to make an impact in the world when we put together good plays. There's you can feel it in the Miss Julie cast. I mean, there's a sort of visceral tangibility about them that people want to watch them. They are enigmatic in that way.
So having seen one play and decided I want to be in theatre, what happened to go from having seen it and wanting it to actually doing it?
Well, I studied at Wits in Johannesburg. I studied theatre. And then I moved very quickly into directing, realizing that I was a useless actress. And then at the time it was workshop. That was the big thing, workshop theatre. And so by workshopping theatre, you're obviously going to do some writing as well. So my first 10 or so plays, in fact, The Wellbeing was workshopped. And we would, improvise and write as kind of an auteur type situation. And then from doing that, after some years, I decided that I needed more structure and discipline in the writing. And so I started writing on my own. And, that's always been my sort of challenge to myself, is to be able to put it down and write and put it down on paper. Although I still direct the work, and I think often my work is better on stage than on paper because of that sort of relationship. But so I became a director, and I worked as an apprentice, I suppose, to Barney Simon at the Market Theatre. He became a good friend, and so I worked and I directed.
So that was straight out of university, was it?
Yeah. But I mean, always, I didn't go straight into directing in the sense that I wasn't paid to direct. I was directing and making my own work, and because of that, finding a little bit of money here and there, or playing bit parts on television, or whatever odd jobs I did. I cleaned windows on high-rise buildings. And then taking those little bits of money and producing plays for our festival in Grahamstown. And so, in a way, that I think that really made me what I am now, which is a CEO as well as an artistic director, a producer as well as a director, because I had to produce my own work initially and find the money and make a plan, So I became writer, director, producer, and then as the years went by, I was resident director at the Market Theatre, then associate artistic director, then later resident at Baxter, and finally CEO / artistic director at Baxter. So most of my time I ran theatre and I commission work, and then every 2 to 3 years I'll do my own work as well.
Sounds like it's all gone like a dream almost. I'm sure there must have been, high-rise windows sounds like a downside to it.
There's always, anyone that runs a theatre will tell you, always trying to fundraise, find money for the next project, and there's always cutbacks, and we're not funded by the university, we're not funded by the government, and so we have about half our operation costs funded by the university. Although we're professional theatre, we're on the university campus, and they fund us 50% of our operation. So I have to find the other 50% by doing commercial work in the theatre and renting out the space, and then fundraising project by project and to put on work.
So you've not got, because over here now, and probably in the States, single commercial sponsors are becoming, I was thinking about it, in London, all of the major theatres, if you look, they've got a big finance house attached to them really closely. Everyone from the National Theatre, they'll meet everywhere. And it's kind of a little bit worrying when got Britain trying to leave Europe and the bank's trying to leave the country. It could be interesting over the next few years. You've not got those kind of issues.
No, we don't. I mean, the arts is just not funded in the same way, in South Africa as besides the arts councils. In other words, there are 9 theatres that get subsidy from government, but that's for operation costs. It's not for artists. We don't really have any structures of funding. And that's why, again, touring for us is lucrative. So if we get a big tour, like we did with Miss Julie, we make a profit. And that we put that straight into the next play. So, again, To get people to come to South Africa is difficult. So to come to Edinburgh, and we know, well, there are going to be at least 10 producers that we meet. It's worthwhile.
You started out working, as you said, in the 1980s, and, well, the world has changed a lot since the 1980s, but South Africa much more so. How has sort of the relationship between theatre and South Africa changed across that incredible period?
Well, for some years, probably 10 or 12 years after democracy, there seemed to be a dearth, in a way, of writing and theatre making, and I think writers lost their voice in that they didn't have this need, this ideology behind what they were doing. So for many, many years, protest theatre was a thing. It drove people to write. And when democracy came in, there was a so-called rainbow nation, and nobody was really meant to say anything bad about anybody else, especially about the new government. So
difficult when theatres can't talk about governments, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's changed now, of course, with the Zuma era. I mean, everybody's talking about Zuma, But yeah, so for a while, theatre seemed to lose its credibility, and people would say, "Oh, I don't want to go to theatre. I don't want to see protest theatre again." What for? Meanwhile, of course, it wasn't protest theatre. Theatre was evolving with the times. So there was that time. But interestingly, in that time, I wrote Sepang, which looked at infant rape in South Africa and child rape, which is a massive thing in our country, and the whole sense of not looking after one's children, and as a community, as a society, not looking after our children, is something that is not only prevalent, but it's like a disease, and kids are just not valued. And so the new government has done nothing to protect children, to protect the rights of children. And so that's a constant theme in many plays, and many people talk about it and write about it. But so that was difficult at the time. I didn't get a cent of funding to do that play, who was going to fund a play about childhood. Interestingly, over the years, and it's been many years, because it's strong theatre, people have supported it, and it's now become a set work in schools. So for those 10 years, that there was sort of a quiet period of people looking at American musicals and a little bit of comedy. But now, I mean, things have changed again. I mean, there's a serious look at what's going on with the ANC, and the ANC are quickly losing ground and losing power, and of course corruption is very, very prevalent. And I suppose in the world, I mean, the whole world, there's a shift in politics and right-wing.
And the oddity of populism that seems to be based on, I'm not sure I necessarily want to quote Donald Trump, but I think there is an awful lot of fake news and false information out there. Who's producing it, we can leave for others to debate. But that's, I'm sure, going on in South Africa as much as anywhere else.
It affects everybody. And I mean, I suppose there is a world, universal sort of consciousness around that, around what's going on with the right wing and populists. And in that way, I mean, South African writers comment on all sorts of issues. And for me, I would like to be seen as a writer that can contribute to a canon of world thinking. So not through the lens of socio-political situations, specifically apartheid. That might be a context, and that might be our history, but it's not, it's not in our every story. It's not all that we are. And me having been around for 30 odd years now, sometimes get tired of being seen only in that light, and a few of the writers are starting to sort of protest in a way about, deliberately making work that is more personal. And also in these times when things are so chaotic, politically and especially racially in our country, again, now it's gone back to a very racial speak, there's a racial speak, and there's kind of I wouldn't say an attack, but there's certainly it's certainly a time for white people to be quiet and do a lot of listening.
Does that affect the plays that you commission?
That I commission? Well, not really. I mean, I'll commission plays based on what I think is important at the time and what needs to be spoken about. So, I mean, The Fall, for instance, speaks about exactly that, about the white voice being too dominant. Still, 20 years after democracy. And a lot of the fallist movement that happened at UCT and is still happening, and not only UCT, all the universities in South Africa, is about saying that white people must listen. And, as hard as that might be, if you're white, it's true. There has to be a lot of listening. So then as a writer, you can't really comment, or I felt I couldn't really comment politically. I don't want to be a satirist or a political voice, So one looks deeper into the personal, and that might then, as I did with Wings, that might then reflect on something more universal.
You have the ability to draw in certainly the best South African actors, or it appears to me, I'm not necessarily well versed in that, but film stars, Janet Suzman was in Solomon and Marianne. That must be a massive advantage to you.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I have a huge respect for actors as artists. Now, I'm not talking about performers, I'm talking about artists, and so I've had the good fortune to work with a core group of actors for the last 20 odd years, and so we've developed a relationship, and they like working for the Baxter. We make sure they have a good time, and so
and they probably end up appearing in the kind of plays they want to be in as well, I would think.
Yes, it's challenging work, and it's. I mean, I think of the 30 actors that we have here in Smart City. We have a few, 28 actors we have here in Edinburgh. They are all incredibly powerful. They're not mediocre. They're very rich.
And are they all from Cape Town, or
no?
Drawn from more widely?
Yeah, mostly from Cape Town, but not all of them. A couple are from Johannesburg or the Eastern Cape.
So in terms of what we see in Britain, you are from South Africa, you are probably the majority of the work. Is there a vibrant theatre? You said there are about 9 major theatres?
Yeah.
Is there a vibrant community? We see the market gets things to come to London occasionally.
Yes, I mean, it is vibrant. There's certainly what used to be called community theatre. There's now a bridge happening between the community and professional theatre. And at the Baxter Theatre, we do a lot of that. So we've got a development program called Zabalaza Theatre Development Program, and culminates in a festival. And we have 400 odd plays participating every year.
Has that proved a good source for picking up talent?
Absolutely. So 2 of the actors in Miss Julie originally came through that program and that festival. So Bongi, who plays John in Miss Julie, and then you saw Solomon and Marianne, Kailetu came throrough that.
And had they wanted to be actors, or they just did the community thing and...
No, they did the community thing and loved it and wanted to be actors. In fact, Bongi wasn't an actor, he was a musician. And he played percussion on the side of the stage. And in Karoo Moose, just before Karoo Moose, he was in one of those plays at the Baxter in the Zabalaza Festival, and he was playing percussion on the sidelines. And then I came in to direct. It was like the winner of the festival, so I came in to direct, help them. And I said, "Why are you sitting there on the side?" He said, "No, that's where the musician." I said, "No, you got to come on the stage." And then from there he went into Karoo Moose, and from Karoo Moose he went into Miss Julie. So, and now, I mean, he's an awesome actor.
That must be really satisfying. Well, for him clearly, but for you as well.
Yeah, and he's done a few big movies now as well. So he's fantastic.
I was hoping you're going to take us across to movies. So you have concentrated on theatre throughout your career. Was there ever temptation to become a screenwriter or a movie director?
I went to Sundance actually. At Sepang became a short film, animated film, which won all sorts of awards, and then we were invited to Sundance.
Did you write the screenplay for that?
Yeah. And I wrote the full-length screenplay as well, and then I went to the director's workshop as well in Sundance. And on my way to making that feature, and then there was a big collapse in the banks and the finances and everything. And then I was given this job at the Baxter. So I've never made a feature, which is a waste really, because I had a great time. It was a privilege to be part of the Sundance Fellowship.
So is that still an ambition?
You know, I think that filmmakers are particular in that you have to obsess about film in the same way that I obsess about theatre. And so I don't think you dabble in film, you know. I think you want to be a filmmaker, you have to be a filmmaker.
The impression I have these days is that people dabble in it to start with, and then they decide that it's the way forward.
Look, and I mean, there are directors who do both theatre and film, you know, very well. But I'm not sure that I have that talent. I think I'm quite visual. I just don't know if I'm technically. I don't think I'll ever do it. I don't think so.
But you've worked with a lot of actors that cross over, presumably, between film and theatre.
No, and I love film, you know. Maybe I will one day, but I'm so busy running this theatre, and I have 2 children, so you know, I think you need to be absolutely obsessed and dedicated, and it's a flat-out full-time thing. Especially, I mean, friends of mine that are movie makers in South Africa, they spend years, you know, getting the money together and getting the movie together. Spend 6 years before they even make the movie. You know, whereas for me, if I want to make a play, I'll make it. There's an urgency.
How far do you program ahead?
Usually 2 years.
Right. And do you bring stuff over from elsewhere, or is it all South African work?
Very seldom. I mean, if I do, then it'll be very small. You know, one person, 2-person show. I'd love to do more, and I'd love to actually have a festival, an international festival at the Baxter. But it's just funding's just not there. But that's definitely on my list.
Festivals seem to be becoming more popular. I mean, it's certainly notable in Edinburgh that you've got people from Adelaide here and from various other festivals. London currently has the Camden Fringe going on, which is relatively small. There's a New York Fringe, which has never really taken off, but it does appear that someone has decided fringes are a good idea and festivals are a good idea.
I mean, I don't know about this fringe thing, to be honest. I've never... I mean, Edinburgh, certainly because it's so big, and it is a market. But those smaller fringe festivals, I've never...
I think they seem to be for people who can't get anything else put on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what about the Edinburgh International Festival? Do you see much in that?
Usually. Oh, in it?
International.
Well, look, I always think that if there's a main theatre festival attached to the Fringe, that's good for the festival. It brings people in, and if they go see the main, then they'll see, you know, a few things on the Fringe. So I think it's important to have a main. And
you've not so far worked with the Edinburgh International Festival?
No, I haven't.
Because that would be an obvious development.
Actually, that chap knows me.
Fergus Linehan?
Yeah. He was apparently on a panel that selected me for the Rolex award, and I keep meaning to try and get a hold of him. So do you remember me? Maybe let's, bring one of the Baxter shows on the main. It would be nice, and we wouldn't have to struggle so much.
What about running a theatre? You said that from your earliest days you were used to the commercial side of theatre, which to me is absolutely vital. It's all relatively artistic, but if you lose money then you don't get a future. Do you still find that enjoyable? Is that the right word? Is it easy to do now, having done it for so long?
I find that the easy bit. It's not difficult. The hard bit is making good work. That's really hard. But you find 100,000 to 200,000, you put your actors and make a plan to make something happen. That's and then you just do that.
I suspect there are a lot of people listening to this interview who are holding their heads and thinking, how is that easy? Particularly people who just brought their life's work up to Edinburgh and know they're going to lose most of the money they put into it.
Well, I mean, there are rules, you must never lose more than you have. So I never do a budget when I'm touring, like now in Edinburgh. I will never budget, thank God. I'll never budget in the door. Whereas when I run my theatre, I always budget in the door. Because you need to run a theatre with the idea that you have to get a certain attendance. Mm. Otherwise, you may as well just close shop. But with a risk like Edinburgh, I would never put Baxter money at risk.
But Edinburgh effectively, for most, if not for everyone, is a loss leader. As you say, it's to pick up other work.
And we knew that.
And even at 100% capacity, I don't think most productions are going to make enough money to make anyone happy, if anything.
No, it's definitely an investment. You hope like hell you're going to get picked up and make some money along the way.
So what have you got coming up ahead? So you're leaving Edinburgh in a few days' time, heading back to South Africa directly?
Yeah.
And then?
Going home. Then I need to run my theatre, so I need to plan next year. And we need new product.
So does that mean you're going to write new plays?
No,
or?
not me. I want to do some more. I'm really interested in this young group, the fall group, that year. So I want to do some more plays with that cast and with the young artists in Cape Town, because they seem to have so much to say, and they're pulling in audiences, and the young audiences. That's interesting because young people don't usually come to the theatre. So I want to invest the next 2 years.
Is that in South Africa and in London? Edinburgh. You found young audiences coming in.
Yeah. So I want to invest probably 2 to 3 years in that group, that particular group, and see what we can come up with. Yeah, because they're writers as well. So that's what I'll probably be doing.
That sounds very exciting. Lara Foot, thank you so much. That's been really interesting. I'm with Monica Dolan, esteemed actress and now writer in Edinburgh, about halfway through the Edinburgh Festival and Fringe, where she is performing a play that she has written, the title of which can confuse people. So I'm going to put her on the spot and ask her to tell us, what's your play called?
Well, it's called The Beasts, and it's got an asterisk, so it's whatever consonant would go in there.
So the asterisk is after the B and before the East.
That's right, yes.
Do you want to tell us, first of all, what made you decide to write a play, and particularly to write this play?
I'd written another play before which proved a bit too big for my brain, and that was sort of to do with art and pornography. It's still in my bottom drawer, and lots of the things that I looked into were to do with that, but then I found myself being more interested in digital technology, and I found myself writing. There was a particular scene which was to do with a boy who'd been sent a photograph of a girl at school, an indecent picture of a girl at school, that she'd sent it to him and that he was getting the blame. And so I was sort of looking at that kind of thing. I started looking into documentaries about advert games, which affect children very much, and targeted advertising at children. So that was all sort of seeping around in my brain. I don't think as far as I was concerned, I was already writing something about that with this other play. And then at quite a relaxing time, on quite a relaxing occasion, as usually happens, you get tapped on the shoulder by your unconscious and it comes up with a story. So I had an idea for the story for The Beasts. And so once I started telling that story, I found that it was linked to lots of these themes that I'd already been looking at, and that they were they sort of cohered much better in this story, actually. And it was a simpler thing. I think it's generally quite good if things are getting too big for you and too difficult for you to simplify them, and then you sort of find that these ideas just come out by themselves, and these themes sort of express themselves if you've just got a quite simple story, I think.
Do you find writing easy?
It's rewriting that isn't easy. The initial writing, and it's finishing something that I found with this. I mean, I suppose it depends on piece to piece, I don't know, and I'm certain it depends on writer to writer. But with this, the start of it, it's a sort of what-if scenario. So it wasn't that difficult to imagine. And I suppose the first third of it is leading the audience to realise what's happening. And at certain points you want pennies to drop, and they'll be at different times for different members of the audience. And there are certain points at which you'll want the audience to be ahead of you. What I then found difficult was finding an ending. And I think with that you've just got to... I remember I went to see my friend Toby, who's a writer, and he just said, there's no secret, you've just got to finish it. Just think of an ending. And I remember, so I was meeting him and I was treating that as a kind of deadline for thinking of an ending, and I remember being really angry with him when I met him because I thought, I've had to finish this because of you and it's really not good, the ending. But actually it was a really good thing to do, because then I went off with the ending I had and all the angry feelings I had, and just thought, okay, well, what isn't right about this ending? And it's sort of a bit like a meeting. If nobody says anything at the beginning, if nobody makes a proposal that isn't much good, everyone else can't say why it isn't much good. And that, you know, that's how saying that things aren't very good is a really, really important part of the creative process. And actually, the ending that I had, I made some fairly major tweaks, but it's not a million miles away from the ending that I've got. So, you know, it was certainly an important thing to do. I think that if you're writing, a lot of the thing that stops people finishing things, I think, is that they try and think it all through before they write it. And there's no, for me, certainly my brain's not big enough to do that. You have to think it on the page.
I think there's also a danger that people are seeking perfection. And if you seek perfection for long enough, your bottom drawer becomes your second bottom drawer and your third bottom drawer as they fill up.
That's a really, really good point. And actually, that's sort of what happened to me, because I had my play in the bottom drawer, and I did just start to think, this is ridiculous. I want to write something. I know I want to write something. I know I want to be a writer. The only way to do that is to write something. So anyway, I just got a blank piece of paper and I put all my ideas down on the piece of paper. I didn't list them. It was all higgledy-piggledy, no particular order. And I just thought, okay, I'm just going to choose one to write, just one of these things to write. So I thought, okay, I'm going to choose this one. But before I do this one, I'm going to do this other one. And this other one is the one that I've done.
Right.
And actually, I think, because I was sort of thinking, oh, well, I'll do this other one first, which is the Beast which I've taken to Edinburgh. I've kind of thought, well, this one's for practice, and this is the one that I'm trying to do before this massive work of art that will probably never happen. Yeah, I think that perfectionism thing can stop people, but I know that what most writers say is that, well, first of all, nothing's wasted. So anything that you write, no matter how terrible it is, you probably couldn't have written the next thing if you hadn't written that, because you needed to... It's sort of a slight... For a few writers, I think it's a process of excavation, certainly for me. I needed to seep through all the thing, or, you know, everything in my bottom drawer before I could get to that crystallised moment of thinking, okay, this is the story, and actually I've done lots of the research for the themes.
Those themes that you mention...
Yeah.
I'm impossible to shock because I go to far too much theatre.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I was getting to the stage of, should we say at the very least, being surprised, if not actually deeply shocked by it.
By my play?
Yes.
Gosh, okay.
Well, I think one of us needs to explain a little bit more, and that involves a girl of 7 or 8, forgive me, but 7 or 8 anyway.
Well, she her age sort of
but when she
changes.
who
that's part of the process of the story.
Disappears overseas for... What's now
I don't want to say too much
it's a
about
procedure,
it.
but we won't say any more.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much because I don't want to spoil the audience experience.
Absolutely. But it was based on actual sort of documented facts.
No, the odd thing about writing this is that it was a what-if story. It's an imagined story.
Right.
What I've discovered since, just before I went to press with publishing it, there was quite a lot that came out in the papers about kids having Botox, about makeover apps that were directed at children, about plastic surgery apps targeted at children as young as 9. which are basically plastic surgery simulators. And the reason it was coming out in the papers, I think sort of towards the end of June, was that a group of bioethics people that I'm now in touch with, actually, because now they've seen the play, are very concerned that cosmetic procedures is a very large umbrella. It's a very, it can mean anything from sort of having your teeth done to putting moisturiser on to having quite a major procedure or Botox or whatever. And that as far as children are concerned, or as far as age regulation is concerned, the only age regulation that we have for cosmetic procedures, inverted commas, are for tattoos and for tanning. So any child can go in and have Botox. Botox is something that's medically tested, so at least it's medically tested, but fillers in your face are not medically tested, and also they don't have to be done by anybody, by a doctor or anything like that. So I think that what's happened is, as with many things that we've got at the moment, because the world's moving on so quickly, is that nobody ever imagined that kids were going to want Botox, because you just think they haven't got any wrinkles yet. That's something that older people are going to do. But if they have certain unscrupulous people or companies targeting them, and everyone has a vulnerability about not being perfect or not fitting in, or particularly when you're a child, and you're very vulnerable, and when you're adolescent as well, so much of your body's changing and your hormones are flooding in, and so much is about self-image now anyway, and people have a whole sort of social media image as well as their actual selves, which is growing from who they are. So it's very vulnerable, and I think possibly something that we need to at least be aware of.
Did you have a particular actor in mind when you were writing the play?
I think I always knew that I would do it. When I first started writing it, it was an idea that I wanted to pursue in writing, and it could have turned into a short story. I think I wrote a bit of it, and then I thought, actually, I could do this. This could be a monologue. And Edinburgh, I always knew I wanted to do it in Edinburgh, because it's the place that you try things out. There's more audience and performer commitment here at this time of year than anywhere. And it's also a place where people want to be challenged. And, like you say, some parts of it are quite shocking, I suppose. And I forget that because I'm so used to the idea. So I thought, okay, well, Edinburgh's the place to do this. So yes, as I was saying, you asked about whether it was true. So in my head, it was a what-if story. It was an imagined story. I didn't know any of this at the time about cosmetic procedures for children not being illegal and all of that. So it was an idea that I just pursued. And then I think much later along the line, I think someone had Googled it and told me that apparently something like that did take place, that I think somebody took their child to Mexico. I think it was a mother who'd had lots of plastic surgery herself. And that's another thing that we've got to be aware of too, that as plastic surgery becomes more and more, or any kind of cosmetic procedures become more and more normal to us, they're going to become more and more normal to us for our children too. And as our culture becomes more sexualised, if we continue to go on that road, we're going to be more sexualised as people. I have
a nasty feeling if I interview you again in 20 years' time, you're going to be saying, I told you so, I told the world this was going to happen.
I really hope that I'm not.
So do I, but...
I really hope that I'm not. As I say, I'm in touch with these brilliant bioethics people. I'm hoping that we might... I know that they've got a space in London. I'm hoping to maybe do it in their space in London, maybe they were talking about having a panel debate possibly at the Bush where we did previews. There wasn't quite enough time to organise. I mean, they've got some very interesting, varied people who can speak about it all. But yeah, we didn't have a lot of time to organise it, and also I thought maybe it's better that they see the play first. Just, what if it's saying something that they don't agree with, but I think they liked it, so...
Good. What about the Edinburgh experience? We were talking earlier, and you said you've been up to Edinburgh a couple of times long ago, but not really thrown yourself into it like this.
Oh no, it's a very, very different experience performing here than coming to see things here or visiting here. I think I first came when I was quite young, about 14. I came up with my brother and his friend, and we camped. We stayed in a tent, and it rained, and... for some reason at that age that seemed to be fun. yes, and since then I came up with my youth theatre when I was probably about 18, and then recently, in the last couple of years, my friend, who she's probably about 27 now, she brought a show up, I think in 2014, and then brought a show up last year, and I kind of helped out with those a bit. And I thought, this is, she's only the age that she is. I've never done a show in Edinburgh. That's really shameful. I've never even acted in a show at the Edinburgh Festival. I have performed in Edinburgh, touring, and I did a glass menagerie at the Lyceum, which I really loved doing. But I've never performed as part of the festival, and I just thought, come on, get your act together and do something. So I think, she gave me a bit of courage. It made me think, maybe if she can do it, I could do it. So that's what brought me here. But it's certainly, at this stage of the festival, it feels a lot calmer. I mean, it was entirely new to me. At the beginning, there's a lot of frenetic energy around. There's a lot of... It's an odd mix. It's an odd mix between total sort of open-heartedness and very, very focused ambition. At this stage, it seems to have kind of calmed down. I feel like I'm in the swing of performing now, probably... I hope whatever reviewers have been in, but people come in and out all the time. I've sort of...
Have you got good audiences?
I don't want to know. And pretty much. I mean, I think the first night I had, because I've only seat 60 as well.
Yeah, no, it's very intimate.
So the good thing, and that's really, really, I'm so delighted with this space because there's something epic about the space as well, because it's in the Big Belly, so it's a large room.
It's like a mini aircraft hangar, isn't it?
I guess.
Curved roof.
Luckily, I've got a really, really good designer, James Button, and he sort of talked about other spaces, and I said, well, I think I like this space, and he said, yep, we can focus you in that space. We just find lighting ways. We just find a way of focusing you in that space. And actually, what he's done is he's made my sort of little environment very different to the environment outside, and I think that says something too, and I think that works quite well.
But I'm trying not to give too much away, but it's intended as an intimate chat between your character and someone not too far away.
Yeah, and
audience, as you said, there are up to 60 people not too far away.
Yeah, and
so it does work extremely well in that way.
Yeah, that is kind of good. I think that even if I was talking to a lot of people, I think that the feel of the space would need to be intimate. Yeah. What's wonderful about that space is that your voice really carries, and I like the sound of my voice coming back at me as well. It doesn't feel dead. It feels very alive. I feel really lucky to perform it there. And obviously, if you've got 60 people coming in and it sells out, it looks really good, because you could put sold out on the door, even though it's just 60 people, and then more people want to come. I don't know why that happens, but there we go.
You've also, I'm losing track of what's going on. You won at least one award, I've seen. So
I won a stage award.
Exactly.
The stage gave me an award. I mean that's incredible, because when you start off something like this, when I was writing this, it's really embarrassing to show anyone. You just think, is it going to be any good? You think, is this going to connect with anyone? Are people just going to think I'm really disgusting coming up with this idea? You just don't know if it's terrifying showing it to people or reading it to people, and you don't know if it's going to connect with anyone in the smallest way. So then when something like this happens, when somebody gives you something like that, it was a beautiful surprise, yeah.
Which is great. Let's go back a long way.
Okay.
As far as I can tell, and Wikipedia is often inaccurate, you are almost a quarter of a century into your career now.
Who knows?
Who knows? Anybody reads Wikipedia? And I think I can remember back for a significant proportion of that time, but probably not right back 25 years. And always, I have a problem, I never have time to see TV or films, so I knew you as a stage actor, and I assume you love theatre, because you seem to be in theatres an awful lot, sort of opening nights and things.
Oh yeah, I do. No, I see everything. I mean, it's practically an illness. I go and see... I love talking about it, I love talking about the ideas, I love talking about what worked and didn't work, and, my lifeblood is my friends who are in the theatre. I'm not one of these actors who I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got friends who aren't actors, but I'm not one of these actors who hangs out with loads of people sort of that aren't really to do with it. I definitely found my people when I was...
and how did you get into theatre? Is it something you'd always wanted to do, or you fall into it?
Oh, no, God, no. I didn't fall into it. I did always want to do it, yes. I was a total anorak about it. When I was at school, I just wanted to be in all the plays, which I sort of managed to do. Not always having the biggest parts, but I always managed to get in there somehow. Then there was a youth theatre. My friend Leonardo at school in my year was in a youth theatre called Act One at Guildford, and that was run by Jane Walters, who's a really wonderful woman. She's not with us anymore, but she just ran this theatre for young people, and we'd do 2 hours improvisation on a Thursday night and a Saturday morning, and that's an incredible skill to have nurtured at that age. So, and then I met more people that were to do with it. I remember, apparently I said to my mum, I think I found my people. And lots of those people, I wasn't allowed to, at the school that I went to, there wasn't any drama beyond CSE level at that stage, I'm afraid. So you couldn't do any drama A level or drama in sixth form or anything like that. I was at a comprehensive, and it's a wonderful, there was wonderful enthusiasm for drama at the school, but that just wasn't there as a possibility. And some of my friends that were at youth theatre, they were doing A level drama at Brooklands, which was in Weybridge, and that course was run by Jonathan Holloway, who runs Redshift, who you probably know, who was brilliant with me about this, actually, this whole experience. And I remember asking if I could come on a trip with them to see, I think, Neil Bartlett. They were going to see a Neil Bartlett thing. I remember that then Neil Bartlett was going to be giving a lecture at their college, and I was crazy. I said, would it be all right if I come in and join in your class? And I suppose they, now they'd sort of think of health and safety and things like that, and wouldn't let this weird kid into their class. But he was like, yeah, you can come in, and so I listened to that, and it wasn't like I was thinking, right, I'm desperately, I'm definitely going to do this, but I think that wherever anything to do with drama was, I'd sort of snuffle it out and kind of, I think, oh, that's interesting, I want to do that or see that or be part of that class, and that sort of hasn't gone away.
And how did you convert the dream into action?
Yeah, it took a long time. Some of the time that I was at the youth theatre and that I was going to other people's classes, I'd finished school myself, and I worked as a waitress, I worked in a bar, I worked in an insurance company, I worked at the job centre as a casual worker, and then they took me on permanently at the job centre. And all of that time, for 2 years, I was being in my friends' plays. I think I still hung on to youth theatre with my teeth marks on it, even though I was probably getting too old for it. No, you never leave Act One, so I used to go back to that. And all of that time I was with my friends, we'd be practicing speeches, and I was just auditioning for drama schools for 2 years, and doing jobs and trying to be in other people's projects. And we had a little theatre company as well, a spin-off from Act One, which was called Riff Raff Theatre Company, and we had a really good guy in charge of that who was a very imaginative director. So there was a lot going on. Once I'd got in with that group, there was a lot of work going on, and it was very varied, actually. And in some ways, I'm a bit sad that some of those people didn't go further or didn't take it further, because they're actually very innovative people.
And you've got to drama school?
I got into drama school in 1989, and so the whole first year that I tried for drama school, I think I got 1 recall, and I didn't get into drama school. And then the following year, I auditioned for all the drama schools again, and I think I got recalled for all of them. And then one by one, I got rejections from all of them, apart from Guildhall School of Music and Drama and Bristol Old Vic. And the Guildhall one was a weekend And I think I remember I got to the stage where I just thought, okay, like all of these others have rejected me. Can I do this another year? I remember being in bed at night and writing, putting the light on and just writing a list of other things that I could do and other ways that I could get into acting. And, you know, at the end of my time at school, I could have got into university. I did apply for university to please my parents and then sneakily sent off the little last page of the form to say that I was withdrawing because, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. So yeah, I just got to the stage where, okay, I've got this recall at Guildhall left, and what do I do if it doesn't work out? But it worked out wonderfully, and it was exactly the right place for me to go. It was the best place I could have gone in every way.
And at the other end, how easy was it? Easy is the wrong word to use for an actor. How easy was it to get work when you graduated? Or before, possibly? Before
I graduated, I remember talking to this agent, actually, just asking her questions and getting advice. I wasn't trying to join her or anything. It was through my tutor. And I remember saying, one of my questions was, what shall I do if I get a job before I leave? And she said, oh, don't worry, that's not going to happen to you. And then somebody did offer me a job before I left, and it turned out that it was because you do different projects sometimes with outside directors. We had a director do our Brecht project with us, and he invited me to go and perform at the Northcote Exeter for a season. So yeah, I was all set to do my final year musical, playing opposite my best friend. And then I was invited to go to the Northcote in Exeter, so I did a season there. And so that's what kicked me off. And then, but you know, something like that kicks you off, but then you get a lot of time in between. You get a lot of time after that where you're just thinking, okay, what next? And I think that young actors, I certainly see it, and I certainly experienced it myself, find that difficult to cope with, because you know, it's like when you're sort of 4 and a month or a day seems like a year. I think I can probably cope with longer periods out of work now than I could do then, because yeah, you just don't know if anything's going to happen. You're at the start of your career, and any time out of work seems a long time. Luckily for me, I've always been fairly, like, weirdly, sort of perversely, I always slightly look forward to the end of a job, because I think, oh, then I can, you know, relax. So I'm reasonably good at not working for a little while, or finding things for myself to do as well.
When, and it may be difficult to answer this, but when did you suddenly think, I've made it, this is going to be a career, I'm definitely, you know, I've done enough work, I'm always going to be reasonable, have a reasonable chance of getting work going forwards? Was there a moment when a particular role or a particular season or anything like that?
Okay, one thing I will say right now, a couple of my friends, esteemed writer and esteemed actor, a few years ago had dinner with Lauren Bacall, and she said, let me tell you, you never make it. You never make it. So I think she thought that she hadn't made it. And I think that if you think you've made it, it's probably a bit of a problem, because what are you going to do next?
Against which, if you never think you've made it, you'll give up at some point.
I think if you never think you're making it, but I'm probably being pedantic. I don't know. I mean, I suppose once I kind of got to a stage where I had a broad area of work. I've always loved doing new plays, working on new plays, not necessarily performing them, because obviously they don't always work. And sometimes you have to carry them rather than them carrying you. But I always like the nuts and bolts of working on new plays, workshopping them, trying to help the writer. So I think I felt like I'd involved myself in quite a lot of new work, and I'd done quite a lot of Shakespeare. And I do think that if you can do Shakespeare, you can do anything. Like, it's going to help you do new plays. It's going to help you anything that you're struggling with language or material. It's going to help you with lengths of sentences, all of that.
And you've been involved in some pretty major Shakespearean productions as well.
Yeah. So that was good. And then I think that I did definitely have a moment, if I'm honest, of thinking, okay, well, I've done quite, I've done some telly now. I've done some Shakespeare. I think I can, there seem to be skills that I have. There seems seems to be things that I can do.
And how far into your career was that moment?
I think it was just before I auditioned for W1A, because then it was like, oh, okay, what do I do now? And sort of slightly arrogantly thinking, what can someone throw at me next? And then I got W1A thrown at me, and then I knew that I knew that I was born. It was like, oh my God, this is really difficult. It's very challenging. Just all of that kind of language and all of that teamwork, and just luckily there was lots of expertise around me, and you just have to be very, very quick.
And how do you feel about the interaction in your career of different genres? So working on stage, TV, film, etc. Do you like all of them equally? Are you one of those actors who, and we won't tell anyone about this, who, given the choice, would always want to work on stage and would never want to do film, but you rather like the money? Or
no, I think that filming is a wonderful thing, and I think that it's a very brilliant skill. I think it really stretches you. I think it's wholly artistic, and I like variety. I've got a low boredom threshold. I'm lucky in that my low boredom threshold doesn't mean that I go out doing, generally lots of destructive things. My low boredom threshold means that I look for something interesting to do. I mean, lately I've discovered that I like, at the beginning of the year, I did W1A, which overlapped with The Silkworm, which was a Robert Galbraith, J.K. Rowling book, and also Inside Number 9. And I actually discovered that I quite liked overlapping things as well. I think I like the gymnastics of it all. But all the time when I was doing those jobs, I knew that I was going to do this. I was preparing for this. And to be honest with you, if someone had told me when I was that busy that I was going to be, every break that I had, I'd be looking at an email to approve an image or a press blurb or that kind of thing, I'd probably have thought, no, I'm not going to do this, I'll be too busy. But I'm really, really glad that I've done it. Yeah, I just like all the different skills that you need to have, and I very much like television and film and theatre. Television's very fast, and I think that there are some programmes that other people can do that I would find very hard to do. Some people are just very good at working incredibly quickly. Like something like Doctors, some of those performances that you get in that, considering the time that they have, are absolutely incredible. Just some of what the actors can find.
And you don't miss a live audience when you're working in TV?
No, I don't actually. No, I don't. It's nice. I mean, I like having the audience there, particularly, for this storytelling piece. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do it, one of the main reasons, was to do with audience contact and my interaction with the audience. One of the things that made me want to do it was, when I was younger, I remember going to see Peter Ustinov at the theatre, quite by chance, and it was just him on the stage. It was a huge theatre, and all he was doing was telling a story, and it was just him. And everyone was leaning in, he had contact with everyone, even though the space was really big.
So is this one of your ambitions now?
Oh, I don't know.
Fill 1,000-seater with a solo performance?
You've just made me very frightened. But that's a good thing, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know. Dave Allen as well, those sort of storytelling people. But when you're doing film, or when you're doing TV, you're doing TV. So you've got the crew there, but they're not the audience. They're doing what they're doing. And actually, if you're doing a job properly, you shouldn't be missing the audience, because the audience is the camera. They're there with you.
And what does the future hold? Do you know what the future holds?
Well, I've got a few projects bubbling away. I've got, at the moment, I think there are a couple of things. It's always so weird, because I've got a couple of things that, actually maybe 3 things even, that all might work together, or all of them might collapse. I mean, the number of sort of phone calls I've had with friends, or texts with friends sort of saying, yeah, no, I thought I was going to do this, but it's all collapsed now, it hasn't worked. So, yeah, there's a possibility of work for the rest of the year, but until it happens, I'll believe it when I see it, and until it actually happens, then, it's a possibility.
And would you like the Beast to have a longer life?
Yes,
future?
I would love it to. I'd love it to, because I'd love...
With you performing?
With me performing, yeah, definitely for a while with me performing. I'm not ready to let it go. But, it's published. Samuel French have published it. So it's there for other people to perform. I'd love other people to perform it. I think really because I want people to be talking about what needs to be talked about in it. I want people to be talking about just the way that the world's moving, and I'd like people to be talking about the ideas in it and the issues in it. And what I've felt really gratified by is that even from the first time I read it to 8 friends in my flat, when I finished reading, the really wonderful thing was, and these were all close friends, so if I'd collapsed after 10 minutes in a heap, they would have just taken me to the pub and it would have been fine. But they were also, theatre professionals and experienced theatre people. So even from that time, when I read it then, at the end, people were talking about the issues in it. They weren't talking about the structure of it, or, we got onto that, like, yes, you could do this a bit more or cut that bit, or what does this bit mean? But on the whole, everyone was talking about the issues in it. And I'm getting the feeling that that's what the audience is talking about when they leave. So if that can reach more people, that's my biggest dream for the whole piece, really.
Excellent. Well, it's playing in Edinburgh at Underbelly until the August Bank Holiday weekend.
Till August 27th, yeah.
And by the sound of it, you may have a chance to see it at a theatre nearer to home at some point in the future.
I hope
Monica
so.
Dolan, thank you so much. That's been wonderful.
Thank you.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.